My name is John Thompson. My wife, Emily, and I met during college. I was 23, and she was 21 at the time. I was in the Army, working towards a dual degree in economics and accounting, while she was majoring in biology. My military duties were sporadic and dangerous, often involving covert missions. Essentially, we operated as assassins, with my expertise in planning and close combat. I graduated at 25, and 2 years later, I left the Army to marry Emily. Within 4 years, we had 2 daughters. I worked as a freelance accountant for local businesses and traded commodities from home, while Emily, busy with the kids, later got a job at a local college-affiliated laboratory. After a decade of marriage, with both girls in school, I continued working from home to support Emily's return to her job, which she enjoyed. We lived in the house I grew up in, having bought it from my parents when they retired to Florida. Some of our Army missions offered the chance for loot, which we divided among the team members, giving us some financial stability. One February, we decided to celebrate. We went out with our neighborhood friends for dinner and dancing at a club. There were 8 of us, each having arranged a babysitter for the night. Emily and I had booked a room at the hotel connected to the club. Emily looked stunning at 36, slim with brunette hair, wearing a blue silky dress. We had a lovely meal and a great time dancing during the evening. A group of 6 arrived, including Jason Brooks, a well-known local football player. All the women at our table noticed him. He was with a beautiful blonde woman who appeared to be wearing a large engagement ring. Our friend Karen mentioned she was a cheerleader engaged to Jason. After some time, Jason focused on our table and approached, ignoring me. He asked Emily to dance. I tried to intervene, but Emily accepted without looking back, annoyed. I walked to the bar, passing them as Emily danced indifferently. After 2 fast dances, a slow song played, and Emily embraced Jason. Irritated, I stayed at the bar, ignoring the disapproving looks from our friends. Emily, engrossed in her dance with Jason, didn't notice when the slow song ended. They separated, and she returned to our table. I remained at the bar, drinking my coffee. Spotting me, Emily seemed flustered and sat next to Karen. Approaching them, I remarked that they seemed to have enjoyed themselves, though I might have overreacted. Karen explained it was just a dance, nothing serious. Offended, I took a seat as Karen and Emily excused themselves to the restroom. When they returned, Emily wasn't with Karen. Curious, I asked where Emily was, and Karen told me she had left with Jason. Shook, I rushed outside and saw Emily getting into a red SUV, which then drove off. Back at the table, Karen questioned the others about Emily's actions. I suggested that Emily was having her night out and would likely return the next day. Frustrated, I declared that I didn't want her to come back and that our relationship was over, causing a stir among our friends who thought I was too harsh. Angrily, I told them I didn't want anything to do with any of them, considering they knew what was happening but didn't warn me. As I headed to the coat check, I noticed the blonde woman at the table crying. Approaching her, I asked if she was Jason's girlfriend. She confirmed, adding that it was no longer the case. She revealed that they had gone to their house and that he had promised not to do such things once they were engaged. Apologetically, she mentioned that Jason would likely be done with Emily by morning and would drive her home. Gloating, I handed her my business card and told her to call me. Despite her tears, she smiled, and I walked away. I retrieved my coat but left Emily's behind. Then, I went to her hotel room, taking my belongings but leaving hers as I drove home. A fully formed plan emerged in my mind. This kind of situation had occurred during my service, which is why I survived back then. It's a shame I didn't think of a plan before Emily left. I parked my car in the garage, activated the security system, and grabbed a rope from the basement. I changed into a black suit, a black hoodie, dark gray sweatpants, old sneakers, and 2 pairs of gloves. I also took a balaclava mask. Climbing up to the attic with the rope, I secured it to a beam as I had done in my childhood home. I climbed out of the narrow window, bounced down the side of the house, and ran through the wooded area nearby. I hopped the fence and headed to the rear workshop. Inside, I grabbed a backpack, extra wool socks, a pink bandana, and an old hand axe from a toolbox. I packed everything and pedaled toward the river through the woods on my bike. I crossed the river bridge and headed toward Cherry Street, spotting the house with the football statue and the red SUV. Using the axe, I broke the passenger side window, triggering the alarm. I hid behind a porch pillar, and when the door opened, I swiftly dealt with the man using 2 blows of the axe. Returning inside, I closed the front door, turned, and jogged off. I jumped the stone wall, retrieved my bike, and took out the wool socks. I put the axe, gloves, and shoes inside the backpack, zipped it up, and rode away toward the river near the bridge. I stopped and tossed the entire backpack into the fast-moving river, swollen from recent rain. I rode my bike back home through the woods, let myself into the workshop, changed my socks, and switched to another pair of sneakers. I sprayed an ammonia solution on the bike's handlebars and pedals, wiping them clean. Jogging back, I hopped the fence and climbed up the house's side, which was more challenging than expected. Nevertheless, I made it and scrambled through the small window, pulling up the rope. I wounded and wiped the windowsill with a rag, heading to the basement. I removed all my clothing, including the mask and gloves, and put them into the washer in the basement bathroom. I took a long shower, washing everything twice. After finishing, I put on exercise shorts and went upstairs, leaving the basement door open to hear when the washer stopped. Contemplating for a moment, I decided to wear the clothes from the club the night before. Returning to the basement, I transferred the wet clothes to the dryer. Upstairs, I made a snack, had a shot of whiskey, and sat for a while reflecting on things. When the dryer stopped, I took the clothes upstairs and put them away. The balaclava mask went back into the closet where it was initially stored. Glancing at the clock, I saw it was 2:50 a.m. The entire sequence from entering the house after the club to this moment had started at midnight. Going downstairs, I sat on the couch, had another whiskey, and fell asleep. I woke to the door chime, checked the door camera display, and saw two individuals, an African-American woman and a white man with a crew cut. They were cops. The doorbell rang again, and I opened it. Detectives Parker and Harris introduced themselves, flashing their badges. Concerned, I asked about Emily, expressing my worry for her safety. They assured me she hadn't suffered physical harm but mentioned that Mr. Brooks had been attacked. I invited them inside and asked where Emily was. Detective Parker said she was in the hospital receiving treatment for shock. Pausing for a moment, I looked at them, and they returned the gaze, indicating the couch. I suggested they take a seat. They chose separate straight-back chairs, and I settled on the couch. "I think you should explain what happened," I proposed. Detective Harris repeated the question, asking what I had done since Emily left the club with Brooks. Detective Parker urged me to share the details, insisting on an answer. Detective Harris pressed, and I explained that I had gone to our hotel room, packed my things, and driven home. I had then consumed enough alcohol to fall asleep on the couch. They inquired if anyone else was present, and I confirmed that the kids were with the sitter for the night. When asked if I had made any calls or sent emails, I replied no but emphasized I hadn't left the house. Detective Parker observed the surroundings and noted the security system, inquiring about its coverage. I offered to show them, so I came upstairs. I suggested they followed me to the office, and I sat at the computer desk demonstrating the system. I downloaded data from 6 p.m. to their arrival and gave them a jump drive, explaining that the system covered all 3 doors, front, side, and patio, including the sliding door to the pool area. However, the side I had climbed had no door, just the woods and 2 large windows that didn't open, lacking coverage. Harris stated they would need to confiscate the computer. I questioned the necessity, suggesting they might tamper with it before arriving. Harris agreed but emphasized it wouldn't be gone for more than a day. I assured him I would download the same data onto an external drive. I carried out the task, and they requested to look around. I allowed it but insisted they stay together and with me. They took some pictures and then left. It was 7:10 a.m. I informed Emily's parents, Robert and Susan, who lived nearby, about what had happened. They were at their lake house at the time. Robert was shocked by Emily's actions, while Susan seemed less surprised. Susan asked if I planned to see Emily, to which I declined, expressing my reluctance to have anything to do with her after what she had done. I explained that the man being attacked was unfortunate but that it wasn't my responsibility. Apparently, he had a history of such behavior. I mentioned that when Emily gets out of the hospital, she needs to stay away from me and the house, and we can make arrangements for her belongings. Robert suggested we handle things carefully. I decided to move out and let Emily stay, but I made it clear that the house was mine and not community property. After the conversation ended, I called my parents in Florida to explain what had happened. They were stunned by Emily's behavior. My dad mentioned seeing a headline about Brooks being attacked and killed at his home, which didn't surprise me. Soon after the landline rang, it was Karen asking about Emily's whereabouts after hearing about Jason's death. I told her that Emily was in the hospital with shock and that I didn't want to see her. Karen urged me to support Emily, but I insisted she would never have my support after what she had done. The conversation got heated, and Karen called me a pig before hanging up. I took another shower and got dressed to pick up the kids from the sitter. Around 8 o'clock, when we got home, the kids asked about their mom, and I told them she wouldn't be home that day. I suggested we continue with our plans, getting ready for their soccer games. I took them to the soccer complex for their noon and 1:30 matches. I relaxed while watching them play, and afterward, we had ice cream before heading home. When we returned, I found several messages on my muted cell phone. One from Emily's parents stated she was in the hospital, non-communicative. Another from a doctor at the hospital requested a call. Karen had also left a message, saying Emily was with the police and not talking to anyone and suggested I should cool off and bring the girls to see her. I called the girls downstairs and explained that their mom was in the hospital, emotionally damaged but not physically hurt. They wanted to know what happened. I told them, "Your mom went off with a famous football player to his house last night to sleep with him." There's no easy way to say this. I thought about keeping it from you, but you'd find out eventually. Someone attacked the football player, but not your mom. She must have found him or something because she's in the hospital in shock. They hesitated about visiting her, but I instructed them to get dressed, and we headed to the hospital. I called Dr. Samantha Lewis again, who informed me that Emily was traumatized and currently in a catatonic state. When I inquired about bringing the kids, she hesitated. She asked if I planned to see Emily, and I expressed reluctance. I suggested bringing the girls if it might help. She asked if they knew about Emily's involvement with the football player. I confirmed they did and that they were ready to come if she thought it might help Emily. She agreed to meet us in room 3 in 30 minutes at the hospital. Dr. Lewis, a psychiatrist in her late 30s, spoke briefly with us before addressing the girls. She explained their mother's severe shock and apparent disorientation, suggesting that seeing the girls might help. The girls wanted to see her, so I took them to the door and looked in. Emily sat in bed, staring blankly at a TV showing cartoons. Tentatively, the girls approached Laura, the oldest, touched her hand, and called her mom. Shelley followed, but there was no reaction. She started to cry. I comforted her, picked her up, glanced at Emily, nothing, and took Laura's hand to lead them out. I told them we had tried. Laura asked if Emily would wake up. I assured her that she would eventually and suggested they might visit her again soon. Shelley whispered, "What if she doesn't wake up?" Reassuringly, I said, "She will, I know it." Dr. Lewis added, "Girls, I will surely let you know when she comes back from this." We left the hospital with both girls crying in the car. I questioned whether I should have taken them, wanting to see if their presence would help Emily. Despite my anger at her infidelity, I hadn't wished this upon her. I felt remorseful, though she deserved to suffer, not like this. Tears welled up in my eyes. Back home, I made eggs and toast for them, involving them in the cooking to lift their spirits. Then, I put on a movie for them in my office. I called a friend, a public defender, to get information about what happened at Brooks's house after I left. He couldn't get police reports but suggested ambulance run reports might be publicly available. I asked him to get one if possible, and we hung up. In the living room, I watched the movie, pondering what might happen. An hour later, my lawyer friend called back, emailing me the ambulance run, revealing a distressing situation. I shared details of the police visit. He said that if security showed no one coming or going, I likely didn't need to worry. However, he cautioned about potential police actions and recommended getting a lawyer just in case. Though I didn't think I needed one, I called the recommended woman after reviewing the ambulance report. Police found Emily with Brooks's head cradled in her lap, covered in blood, dressed in a thin robe, chanting "no" repeatedly. They took her to the hospital where she remained unresponsive. An officer had asked if she saw who did it, but she gave no response. This sickened me, making me wonder if she would ever recover. I researched PTSD and shock-induced catatonic states, noting recovery from the catatonic state but potential long-term effects of PTSD. Lawyer Jessica Collins, a sharp-looking blonde in her mid-40s, heard the story, received the ambulance report, and was appalled. After ensuring the security video's integrity, I requested my computer's return for work. Providing a retainer, Jessica called the police station and spoke to Detective Parker about retrieving my computer. I had already looked into PTSD and shock-induced catatonic states, finding that people typically recovered from the catatonic state but could suffer from PTSD for years. Jessica Collins set up an appointment for me to meet her on Monday morning at 9:30. She gave me her cell number in case the police came earlier, but they didn't. She reassured me that I had enough time to verify if the computer had been tampered with and assured me it hadn't. I agreed, saying, "Okay, I'll send someone tomorrow morning to get it." She replied, "No, I'll send someone from the office." I shook my head, saying, He won't be coming." She understood and said, "All right, he'll be there at 9 o'clock." After the call, I told her that I wouldn't speak to the police without recording the conversation. That afternoon, when the girls returned from school, they immediately asked about Emily. I had contacted the doctor earlier, but there was no significant change. The girls got into their homework, and later we ordered pizza. I joked that if their mom didn't come back soon, I'd have to learn how to cook, which made them laugh despite the joke. I am actually quite good in the kitchen, just not used to cooking at home often. When Shell went upstairs, Laura asked if I was willing to forgive Mom for her affair. I replied that right now, I just wanted her to get better. Shortly after, the landline rang, and John Matthews from the newspaper introduced himself. He said, "We have information suggesting it was your wife, Emily, who was with Jason Brooks when he was killed. Can you confirm that?" I expressed a desire for privacy, explaining the potential consequences for my daughters at school. John hinted, maybe if that information were to come out. Reluctantly, I confirmed it and was asked about my feelings regarding my wife's lover's death. I stressed that any harm to my family resulting from their publication would lead to legal action against him and his paper. John said, "This is going to come out, Mr. Thompson. I can't stop that." Seeing a TV truck parked in front of the house, I conceded, "I see a TV truck. I guess you're right. Sorry, I have to go." A knock came at the door, and checking the camera feed, I saw a young woman with a microphone over the intercom. I said, "Leave, you're trespassing, and I will call the police." She asked, "Is your wife there, Mr. Thompson?" I called the local precinct and requested assistance in removing the press from my front porch. They arrived, dispersing the group of 6 people, but the truck stayed, totaling 4. Next, I called the doctor and urged her to secure Emily before the press invaded. I also discussed relocation and adjusting the girls' schooling. However, they insisted on continuing at their current school, even if they had to live elsewhere. I said I'd consider it. I contacted Jessica for advice. She agreed to issue a statement to the press to alleviate the situation. The statement, issued through her office, expressed our desire for privacy, stating no comment on the rumors about my wife and no future comments. It warned that the media's continued presence outside the house would be actionable if it harmed the family and requested the trucks to leave. Meanwhile, Detective Parker and her commander announced a press conference for 7 p.m. Watching it, the police revealed that Jason Brooks had been attacked and killed with a sharp object outside his home. Although a woman was inside the house at the time, there was no indication she witnessed the attack. The investigation was ongoing. The initial inquiry focused on the woman's marital status and whether her husband was a suspect. Detective Parker noted that since everyone knew her name, it was assumed she was married. He said a thorough investigation of the husband revealed no indication of his involvement in the attack. In fact, he appeared to have been at home all night. A reporter situated some distance from the scene asked about other women, particularly married women, and their husbands. The police acknowledged systematically investigating claims of Brooks seducing married women and found some truth to it. Brooks had apparently pursued several married women while their husbands were present, prompting further investigation. Commander Johnson concluded the conference, announcing that any additional information would be shared before the Wednesday briefing. The police departed amid shouting. I arranged with the girls' school to have their work delivered or sent electronically for the next few days. I called Emily's parents, advising them to be cautious of the press, though none were present at their location for now. The press had also left our street on Tuesday. The doctor called reporting Emily's responsiveness and that the police were with her. I informed her parents and took the girls to the hospital. Upon our arrival, the police were just leaving. Detective Parker expressed a desire to talk to me, and after meeting with her, I agreed. Emily appeared dazed, exchanging greetings with the girls through smiles and hugs, but she barely acknowledged me. The girls provided updates on the TV trucks in school, yet Emily appeared to drift off, prompting the doctor to suggest letting her rest while her parents conversed with the girls. I engaged in a conversation with Detective Parker. She remarked that Emily seemed to be recovering. I responded, saying that maybe she was, but I didn't really know. I asked if she planned to take Emily home until she recovered. Parker mentioned that after her recovery, they would likely separate. I suggested giving Emily a break and questioned what more punishment she could receive than what had already happened. I clarified that for me, it wasn't about punishment but about respect and trust. I expressed that I would never trust or respect her, noting that the feeling might be mutual. Parker smiled, suggesting that Emily might fear me and that I might not be trusted either. She accused me of trying to provoke her, stating that she knew I had nothing to do with Brooks's attack. She acknowledged my Army background and formidable reputation in the service, speculating further. Detective Parker suggested that while an ordinary person might not have been capable of committing the crime, perhaps I could have done it. I firmly denied this, emphasizing that we had home security footage from Brooks's house as evidence. Parker dismissed this as irrelevant, stating it wasn't her concern, and ended with a veiled threat, saying she'd be keeping an eye on me in the coming days. Emily began to show signs of normalcy gradually. I took the girls to visit her every day but didn't spend much time in the room. On the fourth day, Emily was ready to be discharged. She asked to speak with me privately, so I sent the girls out. Emily apologized for her actions, admitting that what she did was beyond embarrassing for me and needed more than a simple apology. She expressed her wish to come home, acknowledging the media frenzy and suggesting she could sneak out to avoid disrupting the girls' lives. I gave her a long look and said she seemed to be good at sneaking out. She looked down and mentioned checking with security. I admitted that I didn't want to be around her but felt I had little choice for now. I told her I never intended for her to get hurt and shared my thoughts on her actions. When I asked if she had slept with Brooks, Emily claimed they were undressed in bed when the commotion started. I stared at her, knowing she was lying. Trusting her again was out of the question, but I suggested we see how things go despite everything. I expressed my love for her and walked out. Later, I arranged with the hospital security for a car to pick Emily up behind the building and bring her to my house at 4 p.m. The plan went off without a hitch, and she arrived home around 4:45. The kids and her parents were there with me. I had set up a bed in my office for myself, while Emily would sleep in our room. The rest of the day was very awkward. Emily, her mom, and the kids played Monopoly in the living room, while her dad and I went to the patio to talk. Robert asked what I planned to do. I admitted I didn't really know, but the odds were that we were finished. He encouraged me to try to forgive, highlighting the long history of love between us and our wonderful family. Robert expressed doubt about our enduring love, troubled by Emily's actions. He was particularly upset that she claimed we didn't have intimacy. I acknowledged her statement but emphasized the uncertainty given the time we spent together. I suggested it might make a difference if protection wasn't used and raised concerns about potential consequences like diseases or pregnancy. Robert didn't like the thought and agreed to let Emily stay for now but advised me to find another solution soon. We went back inside and ate pizza. Her parents left, and as far as I knew, they did not discuss the situation with Emily. While putting the girls to bed, Laura asked Emily why she went to sleep with Jason. Emily apologized, admitting her weakness and wrongdoing. Laura expressed confusion, stating, "He wasn't our dad." Emily promised to discuss it later when she knew more. The girls went to bed, and Emily went to the kitchen. I followed about 10 minutes later, making a call to my public defender friend about the autopsy report. He confirmed it was a public document and agreed to get it for me. Emily, drinking a Pepsi, asked if I would be sleeping in our room. I replied, no, I would be in the office. She welcomed me anytime but acknowledged the uncertainty in our future. I expressed skepticism, and she suggested patience, emphasizing that it had all happened in the past week. I went up to my office and tried to sleep but didn't rest well. I woke up at 5 a.m., made coffee. Emily had lied about not having sex, a belief I held due to the timing of her presence at the scene, about 2 hours before the attack when she came down. We got the girls off to school almost like usual, although they were a bit subdued. While driving them, I spent a good amount of time considering my options. If it hadn't been for Emily's condition, I would never have allowed her back into the house, but there were advantages, including making things easier for the girls. Just as I entered the house, another TV truck pulled up outside, and a young woman got out, shouting to see if Emily was at home and if I forgave her. I smiled, waved, and warned her not to come onto the property. Inside, Emily had made some biscuits and offered me one, which I took. She informed me about the TV truck outside, expressing uncertainty about whether they knew I was there and suggesting that maybe they shouldn't. I inquired about what the TV crew wanted, pointing out that they had already published my name and details about my activities at Jason Brooks's house. Emily questioned if they could cause more damage, and I acknowledged that they probably could. I looked at her, contemplating what to do. She asked if I meant about her or about us. I clarified that I wanted her to write down exactly what happened last Friday, from when the confrontation occurred until she ended up in the hospital. I suggested it didn't have to be immediate but wanted it soon if possible. Emily agreed to try, acknowledging that it might be traumatic and mentioning needing to call work to check if she still had a job. I questioned why her job would be at risk for cheating on me, expressing doubt that her workplace would care. She explained she had been off for a week and called her workplace. They allowed her to put the week on sick leave and the next week on vacation time. She then went to her bedroom to type on her computer. I left her alone and went to my office, where I started researching the autopsy material. I ensured that I would receive the results of the test done, but it might take a few more days. Despite the situation, Emily seemed to be attempting to behave normally around me. I acknowledged this but believe she must have questions about what happened. Our routine continued for 2 days until I got the test results from the autopsy. Emily's DNA and bodily fluids were identified on Brooks, proving she had lied about not having sex. I was waiting to see what she wrote to me about what happened, but I just couldn't see continuing life with her as my wife. After dinner the next day, Emily came into my home office. "I finished writing," she said, handing me a printout. I read what she wrote. Emily apologized, expressing regret for her weakness. She recounted the events at the party, explaining that when Jason asked her to dance, she felt thrilled by his captivating presence and reputation. While dancing, she didn't think of anything else. During a slow song, she found herself drawn to him, feeling his size and strength. She admitted that at that moment, she would have slept with him right there, captivated by his attractiveness. Jason suggested slipping out the side door to go to his place, promising her the best sexual experience of her life, a proposition she believed when the dance ended and I wasn't at our table. She arranged to go to the women's room with Karen. When I returned, she sensed my anger but thought I would get over it in time. Desiring Jason, she went out the side door, and they drove to his house. Jason kissed her, carried her upstairs to his bed, and they slept together. She cleaned him and performed another sexual act, but a car alarm interrupted them. Jason left, instructing her to wait. Looking out the window, Emily couldn't see over the porch roof but noticed someone dressed in black running away and jumping the fence. She quickly grabbed a robe, went to the front door, and found Jason lying in the driveway with a bashed-in head. Overwhelmed with guilt, she felt as if her actions had led to this tragic outcome. The police arrived, and she ended up in the hospital. She apologized profusely, tears streaming down her face, expressing her love and confusion about her actions. She asked if I was the person she saw. I clarified that I was at home all night drinking and regretting the end of our marriage, and the changes that would come to our family. I admitted to feeling a lot of anger but assured her that the police had confirmed my presence with the security footage. She acknowledged what they said, but I interrupted, stating that Jason got what he deserved. She disagreed, saying he didn't deserve that, and emphasized that he had been kind and significant in her life. I replied that we didn't need to go there, stating that I could never love her again, maybe not at all. I pointed out that the person I thought I married would never have done what she did. I questioned if the affair was worth what was lost for both of us. She admitted that the affair was spectacular but not worth the consequences. I reflected on the possibility of things being different if Jason hadn't died, but with his death, everything felt irrevocably damaged. She accused me of killing him and ran out of the room. Under my breath, I muttered that she had killed him. After that, our relationship became extremely cold. I resolved not to try to convince her of my innocence or to mend our relationship. I also decided never to admit what had happened, assuming that if I did, she would betray me to the authorities. She had implied that if Jason hadn't been killed, her reckless night might have been worth facing the consequences, maybe not in those words, but still. A few weeks later, I filed for divorce. I requested custody of the kids so they could stay in the house. Emily still had her job, so I asked for no alimony, no child support, and liberal visitation. Emily had recovered enough that I insisted she move out, and she went to stay with her parents. I had her serve there, soon after her father called asking me to withdraw the papers, saying Emily was distraught. I told him she deserved to be distraught and should get a lawyer. He was angry but didn't specify if it was at me or her. He inquired about visitation, and I informed him that she could come over any night and stay until the kids went to bed. Emily visited the next day at 5 o'clock. I had made macaroni and cheese, and we ate with the girls. We played board games and then put them to bed. After that, Emily expressed a desire to talk, but I declined. She insisted we needed to work things out for the sake of the girls, suggesting that they would have to adjust if we were apart. She proposed finding a place where they could visit, emphasizing that the sooner we worked out the divorce, the sooner we could have a visitation schedule. She pleaded, expressing regret for her mistake and professing her love. I rejected the idea, stating there was no way we would stay married after her involvement with Jason. I made it clear it was time to move on. Emily began to cry quietly, despite feeling some sympathy. I wasn't sorry enough to change my mind. Our marriage was over. The divorce went through, and we worked out a joint custody agreement. Emily got an apartment with a big second bedroom for the girls. We settled into a distant but amicable relationship, focused on the girls. After about 4 months, I began to date again. Women from our circle and from work knew I was unattached and seemed interested. When Emily had the girls, I brought several women home for the night. None of them lasted long, but the sex was usually good and sometimes great. I stayed away from married women, although some seemed eager to be with me after my experience. I thought it was wrong to pursue that. Emily was good with the girls but struggled alone. She was taking antidepressants and sleeping a lot, but she managed to go to work and do her job. Her parents and the girls told me she was not dating. 10 years on, Shelley went off to college today. Laura was set to start her junior year. They both had adapted well to the joint custody arrangement and seemed to do well. They both dated in high school and presumably in college. I had a long-term relationship with a younger woman named Cody, whom I met at a bar one night. Like me, she was divorced with 2 children at home, and her husband had moved to the West Coast. We met when she was 35, and her kids were in high school, twins in their sophomore year, heading off to college. She and I moved in together at my house. I loved her, she was lively and smart, and the sex was great. While she might not have been as beautiful as Emily, she was pretty, and guys paid attention to her when we went out. Early on, I informed her about all the commotion surrounding Jason Brooks' death, without revealing how he had died. The publicity eventually subsided, and no one was ever arrested or charged. One Saturday, Detective Parker showed up at my house, and I invited him in. I was home alone. He mentioned his recent retirement and expressed happiness about his good pension. I congratulated him and asked why he was there. He admitted he became convinced I killed Jason, adding that the man deserved it, though maybe not my wife. I denied any involvement, and Parker congratulated whoever did it. I questioned why he thought Emily didn't deserve it. Parker explained that it was just one night, and Emily did what many married women might do when someone came on to them. He suggested that if it had been a discreet meeting, perhaps we could have gotten over it, but it was too public. I inquired about his partner, and he shared that she was now a captain, a real go-getter. We shook hands, and he left. Regarding Emily, she eventually made a partial recovery. We rode together when I took Shelley to school. On the way back, I asked about her well-being. Emily mentioned she was okay and had a boyfriend, somewhat like a friend with benefits. I confirmed that Cody and I were together and might move in together once her kids went off to school. Emily whispered that she wished none of it had happened, expressing regret for the missed opportunity to be empty nesters and have some real fun. She apologized, and we both ended up crying. Later, she moved into her friend's apartment, but I didn't think she ever fully recovered from that night, and perhaps I hadn't either. I admitted to never regretting dealing with Jason, believing it might have saved many marriages, an effective altruistic deed.